It's been a while since we got to go out, see a show, listen to some great tunes live. But if you got to see a show, some recent game concerts have been going on live for us to enjoy. Did we? Let's find out. Also, we're talking about some Monster Hunter stuff, I guess. Welcome to Music Arcade! Boy, this has been kind of a week.
A few. I mean, given the aforementioned Monster Hunter stuff, my week went out like a flash.
Yeah.
This game, man.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Edie couldn't join us this week. He's having technical or personal or something difficulties. Either way, unfortunately, our schedules couldn't line up.
I'm pretty sure it involves moths.
Moths? I didn't hear that part. Uh-oh.
Oh yeah, no, he's been basically hunting moths with chemicals. And so that did a number on his throat. So he doesn't feel like it can survive a podcast.
I somehow missed that. Well, hope he recovers quickly, and sorry about that nonsense. Anyway,
yes,
I'm
indeed.
Galen, the sound guy Firestone.
And I am Ranakel, who forgot we also should introduce ourselves, so thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, not everyone, I'd love it if someone could pick up any episode and get a feel for us. Anyway,
that's sensible. That's sensible.
Yeah. We got a couple of random different topics to talk about today.
It's a bit of a grab bag of recent stuff.
Yeah, I'm focusing on some of the more recent live streams that have gone on. There was one for, what was that game? Evil Geniuses you talked about?
Well, that one isn't a live stream per se, it's just that they... I'm just going to talk about it right now, actually.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So, Evil Genius 2 came out, the sequel from a game from, I think, either 19 or 17 years ago. And, they did their homework regarding the music. Originally, the theme that remained in my memory the most from the original game was the main menu theme, which has this enormous spy vibe, spy movie vibe.
I can appreciate
I've already mentioned that kind of stuff on Snake Eater, and it's not quite Snake Eater levels of spy movie opening.
Let's be honest, that's
there.
really hard to match. Like, that's just straight up a movie song they threw into a video game.
Yeah, that's a high bar.
It really is.
And it doesn't quite reach it, but given that they're working without lyrics, it's a pretty good result.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one who thought of it. The Rebellion team seems to agree. Because they've paid reverence to the original Evil Genius, not just in gameplay and visuals, but also with the music. One of the things they did is to make the entire soundtrack of the original available on their YouTube channel a few months ago.
Oh, I was not aware of that. I should check that out.
Yeah, they did their homework. It's a pretty short soundtrack. It's a management sim, so not a huge rotation in this way.
Okay,
but
am I thinking of the right game here? Because I think I may have played this, but I'm not sure. Was the original one like a Flash game on Congregate?
It absolutely was not.
Okay, so then I am thinking of a different game.
Yes. This one is essentially a James Bond Dungeon Keeper.
Okay, yeah, that wasn't the one I was thinking of. Because there was a play as a bad guy, Evil Genius-like game on Congregate that I played the crud out of.
Oh.
Sounds like I thought we were talking about that because with Flash having shut down, there's kind of been this like nostalgia revival of some of those properties, and we're seeing like new versions come out on like iOS or Apple Arcade or even like HTML5 or
yeah,
PHP.
No, that one is more in the line of 2 Point Hospital when it comes to the kind of intent and mood and quality, because that's there's some rough parts in the UI, but we're not the UI podcast, we're the Music Arcade podcast.
Correct.
And as a result, they apparently give gave the same importance to the main menu theme as I did, and did an orchestral recording of that. And it sounds pretty spectacular, honestly.
I appreciate those.
Yeah. They kept very much close to the original, and then added some elements once they've basically put the main leitmotif in.
Right.
Well, leitmotif is maybe not the right word, but the main...
theme, I think. Is...
refrain, I suppose.
Refrain. I like that. Okay, we'll use that for wording.
Sounds good. And, then they go basically in the direction of what the sequel goes, which emphasizes more, even in-game, on this kind of retro-futuristic 70s aesthetic. And that's honestly quite charming.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that making a comeback lately. Both that and 80s synthwave.
Yeah,
have both been on the rise yet again.
Absolutely. And there's a fair amount of things that lean into it. This one is certainly lighter than, say, a Fallout or something when it comes to the aesthetic theming, especially since they have to accommodate for different evil geniuses with a very different theme.
Right.
An evil genius lair from Zalika, the super scientist mind controller, isn't the same as the one from Red Ivan, which is the big not Russian dictator. And that's overall the game's overall sound and atmosphere is really hitting it nicely, so I look forward to getting back into it, even though another game got most of my attention.
Okay.
But that's pretty much all I have to say for now for Evil Genius 2, which has been a pretty successful revival. Now, speaking of blasts from the past, I believe you have something that caught your interest.
Yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, Atlas put on a concert celebrating Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Revival, or HD Remaster. Nocturne was the first Shin Megami Tensei game I ever played. Let's just start there. And I've been a big fan of the series basically ever since, though it is not my favorite overall. That said, this concert was really intriguing.
It was.
It was live streamed, and I actually stayed up till butts o'clock in the morning in order to both watch and actually record this thing via Pro Tools. No, I will not be handing that out. That's piracy. Stop asking. Just going to cut that off at the pass. They are going to eventually be releasing a CD of this. I assume that's going to end up on Spotify. Go listen to it legally, please. I beg you. Because this needs to be supported.
And it's quality stuff.
Yeah. Overall, it was the tunes I was familiar with. Maybe a little too familiar with. I think one of the issues that I had with it is these performers were really kind of stoic. They were very technical, very interesting, and not very, I guess it's different when there's no crowd to play off of. But these performers were definitely not the sort of the free-flowing kind of live music experience that I tend to gravitate towards.
There wasn't really any improv that completely went off the shelves or anything like that. And that wasn't really the point.
No, it wasn't. It was a very, very good recreation of the music from the games. And not just from Nocturne. They played some from SMT4, SMT1 and 2. SMT4 Apocalypse, which was the only spin-off that made the cut. So no Digital Devil Saga, none of the Persona games. It was just Nocturne and the main numbered SMT. No Devil Survivor or Demon or Devil Summoner as well. You can see there's a theme with them.
There definitely was. That was a very, very cohesive concert.
It was. It played a lot of the tracks mostly in chronological order that you'd hear them in the game, which was a fine enough choice. And it didn't play any of the optional stuff, really, except one. Oh, no, that's not even optional, is it? Never mind, it played none of the optional stuff in the game. It literally was just the main storyline, not the alternate ending.
So basically, they played an audio version of a speedrun.
Essentially. Man, a Nocturne hour-and-a-half speedrun would be just glitch central in order to make that work, I think, but that's not a direction I needed my brain to go. Let's let's talk about the music.
Yes.
Overall, it was a very good, very well-performed sequence of tracks. I was kind of surprised to hear Fiend, honestly. Eddie actually brought that one up on the Discord when he told us he couldn't join us. Fiend is one of those songs that's not very live playable, you'd think, because it's very, it's definitely got a lot more bleeps and bloops, and it's a lot less guitar heavy than Shin Megami Tensei's soundtrack tends to be. I've talked about Shin Megami Tensei and rock before. Like, it's a very, very rock heavy soundtrack, and having this one be less so just felt, having this one song be on there felt a little unusual. Still good, just very different. Yeah, I'm surprised it made the cut. It was a good mix.
In a way, being thrown a little bit off balance just fits in the atmosphere itself.
It does.
Yeah, and that's the main thing I took of this concert, and on a purely musical level, without having played most of the games. I only played SMT4, and I don't remember most of it besides the main huge, deep reverberating piano note you have when you just select the game icon, which shows just how grim everything is. But overall, there is, as I've said, an atmosphere to it, and it really sent me back to the world's Digital Devil saga, oddly enough. With how the tracks as a whole were very electronic, yet heavy at times, solemn at others, and on occasion, even when they kept under some easy listen cafe music, there's still something darker underneath. And,
I would make a serious argument that Digital Devil Saga and Nocturne, which were back-to-back releases, were the heyday of Shoji Meguro. I think that's still the best work he's ever done. And while he's still doing some solid work for Persona, if y'all remember from our Persona episode, and if not, you can find that online on our YouTube channel and on our Anchor FM. I was not super thrilled with Persona 5 soundtrack. It had some great tunes on there, but I felt it was kind of a weaker soundtrack than I'm used to out of Shoji Meguro. I can't say that for Nocturne or Digital Devil Saga. Those two, well, three games really, are just sort of the gold standard as far as I'm concerned when it comes to his composition. It's the tightest, most interesting, and frankly, most memorable.
Yeah, and honestly, it conjures an image of the kind of mysticism, the strange aspect of even modern life, which hits very differently in a pandemic because we don't have access to some of the more mundane parts of it.
Yeah.
And essentially taking a step back and seeing how weird it is, taken out of the habit we have to reflect on some elements of modernity and our daily lives as they are. It really is the kind of feel this concert gave me, and it suits the themes of the games.
Yeah, you know what? Wow, yeah. Me, on the other hand, I will fully admit I'm just a concert junkie. I love going to shows. And I haven't had a chance. Like, the last 3 things I did, essentially, before the lockdown started, were concerts. It was the Nier concert in Los Angeles at the Microsoft. It was A New World, the chamber orchestra version of Final Fantasy music. And then it was Epica and their 10th anniversary of the Design Your Universe album. And they did a one-off show in LA that I was lucky to go see. And then for a year, I essentially have had nothing resembling a live show to go to. Once or twice there was a live stream performance, and this was kind of a special one, because this is definitely the most professional live stream performance of the ones that I've seen online thus far.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, it was professional. Every element of this was very tight, very controlled, very, very well-rehearsed, well thought out. I couldn't find a single thing to complain about in terms of the quality. And I want to give a special shout-out to, I hate that I'm probably about to butcher this, Katsumi Sambongi. Sambongi? I don't know how to pronounce a GI in Japanese. I feel like it's Sambongi.
Sounds right to me.
I'll go with that, and on the off chance she ever hears this, I apologize. Anyway, the trick with this is this is by far and away one of the best broadcast mixes of a live concert I have ever heard in my life. This was so clean, and so, like, nothing was out of place. Everything, the blend was just absolutely magnificent. You could hear everything. You didn't have the usual live music problems of rhythm guitar being drowned out or the bass being too hyped up. You didn't have, like, when you had things dip in and out, none of it sounded like it was coming up late.
And remind me, what's your occupation?
Yeah, hi, I'm a professional audio engineer and sound effects editor.
Just putting that out there.
Yeah.
These are not faint phrases.
No, I have done so many. You know, I mentioned Epica earlier, and they did a live streamed concert a few years back for their, just as a band, 10th anniversary. And let me tell you, the broadcast mix on that one was a problem. The death growler in the band, Mark Jansen, he got cut off several times because the engineer didn't know to pump his mic. You could barely hear the lead guitar sometimes. I discovered on the CD mix later that Isaac had a solo on the song that I had no idea was there the first time around. This is a thing that happens way too often in these live broadcasts, is that the engineer isn't on point. This girl was on point, and just as another shout out, just in general, there aren't actually that many girls in audio. Not on the professional side. It's a real sausage party over here. So, like, a girl being on the desk and being this good, haters, go away. Like, seriously, you sexist jerks. No, she did a wonderful job. She deserves respect, and I don't want to hear that, well, she's a girl so she can't do it nonsense, which you hear all the time in this job, and I hate it. Regardless of who she is, that mix was excellent. It was so damn clean. I don't know what they could possibly change for the CD version, if anything, and if they do change something, I'm almost going to be disappointed. No, this concert was very, very technical, very, very good. I guess my big issue was the performance itself. And I know this is going to be kind of a hot take, but I kind of don't want to hear a song that's more or less a carbon copy of what I can play on the CD, because why wouldn't I just play it on the CD? I kind of want to hear some variation. I kind of want to hear a little more emotion put into it. These were very, very, very stoic, very, very, very professional performers who, I mean, as good as it sounded on a technical level, on a personal, just emotional performance level, I don't even want to say let down, because I think that's inaccurate. I don't want to say disappointed either, because that's also inaccurate. I did enjoy it quite a bit. I guess I felt slightly underwhelmed. Oh, even that sounds too strong for what I'm trying to get across. I'm having trouble finding the English for this.
I think I get the general idea that this was almost too by the book.
Yeah. It was too by the book. Again, looking forward to the CD, but this just it didn't feel like it was a concert. It felt like it was essentially a really, really well done live to 2-track studio recording session, which admittedly essentially it was.
Yeah. Regarding the concert's announcement and promotional material, it was maybe going not hard enough to justify the leaflets having this rocking Black Frost with Dimaifin tattoos, working on a guitar with a pyro jack in the background, also rocking and the like.
Like that sends a message.
It wasn't that level of rocking.
No, it wasn't. It was still, again, very, very good, very technical. There were a lot of guitar solos, so it's not like it was Guitar Light or anything. They had 2 different drummers that they were swapping between. So on an instrumental level, it was rock, but on a performance level, I mean, most of these guys were wearing, like, suits with no ties and jackets. Like, they looked like they were wearing, like, dress outfits. It felt really just... Again, very professional and maybe a little cold. Does that make it bad? No, it'll be a great CD, but...
That was a great listen.
Yeah.
But I suppose part of your frustration is that you mentioned you haven't been able to go to a concert for a while, even though you are a concert fiend, and... This didn't scratch that itch, did it?
It didn't. I gotta be honest, it didn't. Because that's actually, I gotta be honest, a little weird. And I say that because, another, like, even just the regular shows that I saw before the pandemic, even just the regular video game music, the Nier one and the... Chamber Orchestra Final Fantasy music, both of those were... it still had that energy, it still had that vibe, even if, again, you're dealing with very professional players. It felt more like they were playing to an audience. I think people kind of underestimate how important that part actually is.
Yeah.
Playing to an audience is a very different feeling than playing to a camera.
That makes me wonder how the Primal's concert in, a little bit over a month is going to turn out.
Yeah, same with...
Especially since those I've seen live.
Yeah, you have, huh? All right, well, that'll be a very interesting thing to talk about once that hits. Yeah, there's a few more of these happening, although one of them I think is just a live-streamed actual concert, and that's, what do you call it? Hypergriff just today, as of recording, which is April 6th, LA time, announced a big Arknights concert in Shanghai. But that said, they're actually selling live tickets to see that show, but they're also going to be...
they can, because they've got the pandemic under control.
Yeah, they do. I just thought it was very interesting that they're actually going to be doing this show. I hope a CD of this becomes available. I really, 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 really want to hear this.
No kidding. Plus, given how piecemeal the Arknights OST can be, it's bound to be interesting in some ways.
Yeah, according to the actual info, they are splitting the concert into 4 main sections: symphony, rock, hip-hop, and Chinese orchestra. So they're actually doing it in kind of segments. This almost feels a little more like a rock opera than it does your kind of more freeform concert.
That's a nice way to acknowledge the very diverse nature of the soundtrack.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, no, I'm actually very happy with it. Sadly, there isn't the jazz section. I would love to hear that Fungamus song live, going back to a previous episode.
And my other regret is, I don't know it yet, but I assume they're not going to try to do things like take one track and just see what it sounds like in another section, essentially. Just change or blend the genres a little.
I mean, you never know.
I like my genre mix-ups way too much for my own good.
They did, however, say that due to the coronavirus pandemic, Starset and DJ Okawati will not be performing live. So they're actually going to be beaming their parts into the concert.
A bit of a hybrid thing, then.
Yeah. And that, yes, they are recording and uploading it onto Bilibili, which is basically Chinese YouTube. But I hope we're going to get a version of that in the global market at some point.
Indeed.
But yeah, like they just announced that one. There's that Primals concert. I know we're like that's early May as well, right? For the
mid-May.
Mid-May.
Yeah, it's going to be at the end of the 2 days of essentially virtual FanFest.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be a good time.
And then going back to...
There's going to be 2 concerts, actually.
Oh.
As usual for the FanFest, there's a piano concert on the first day and a rock concert with the Primals on the second day.
Oh, nice.
But when I say piano, it's not always exclusively that. In particular, I remember last time I went to it live 2 years ago, there was also the Yangsha Phil theme played on automaton.
Oh, right on.
So Ken is a silly man, and yes, we love him.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, his work is really quite excellent, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, in fact, going back to the very inception of this show, the original first topic before that concert was unfortunately canceled was actually going to be a live concert. Sadly, that got canceled, and that threw the debut of the show back yet another, 2 months.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of that when trying to get the show off the ground. But I guess, to me at least, that kind of shows just how important live music and live game music in particular actually is to me, because honestly, I'm not sure I would have much to do with orchestra music anymore if it weren't for game music, which I know is kind of a horrible thing to say, but there we are. Like game music and movie scoring.
Yeah. I'm not that much of a concert fan myself, but I respect it. Honestly, I don't go to concerts mostly for economic reasons a lot of the time.
They can be expensive.
But every time I've been to one, it's been a good time. Seeing live Emily Simon modulate her voice with this sort of steampunk power glove accessory she had was thing.
That's amazing. I actually, you know what, there's one more of these that I can talk about real quick. Both of us used to be in the Final Fantasy Brave Exvius fandom, and they actually had live concerts of some of that music at their last FanFesta in Long Beach, California, that I was able to attend.
Oh, right.
And that was also a really cool experience.
Yeah.
God, I love game music concerts. I can't wait to go to one again. This pandemic, can we please just get vaccinated and get this under control? I want to see live music again.
Soon.
Very soon. I'm getting my shot as soon as I'm legally eligible to do so.
And then we'll be able to spout memes about how concerts are returning, nature is healing.
God, that would be nice. None of this and the future refuse to change nonsense. We can't have that. I'm not doing that.
You know what else is nature at its angriest this time? Monsters!
Okay,
that's
Monster
my transition. That's it.
All right, good segue. Let's go.
So, Monster Hunter. I never got that into the series before because, honestly, it's a bit slow, it's a bit hard, and it's a bit difficult to get into. But there's always something, and there's definitely love and care given to a lot of the things, including the monsters themselves, of course. And so that's why it was worth persevering, looking into Monster Hunter World, and indeed getting into Monster Hunter Rise, which came out about 10 days ago, and which I've been really, really liking.
So,
yeah.
As a question, is this a new game like the follow-up to Monster Hunter World, or is this like a mobile thing? Like I've heard it banded around, but I know very little about the game itself.
It's a new Monster Hunter entry period.
Okay, cool. So it's just a new Monster Hunter game.
It's essentially Monster Hunter 5 Japan edition, where Monster Hunter World was Monster Hunter 5 we want to appeal to the Western audience edition.
So Rise and World are kind of the same game, but different focuses?
They have similar central systems in how the weapons work, but a different setting, different selections of monsters at times, a different soundtrack, of course.
Okay.
Different Hunter's Hub, and they're two different games. With Monster Hunter World having had an expansion, Iceborne,
right,
and then regular content updates, which culminated in quite a spectacular way. I'm going to come back to that later.
Okay.
But for now, let's focus on the new hotness that is Monster Hunter Rise.
Okay.
And given the classic Japanese imagery there's around, which they're leaning pretty heavily upon, they've made some interesting choices music-wise. In particular, almost all of the tracks have vocals. Not lyrics, vocals. Well, not real lyrics, quote-unquote, because there's such a thing as a Monster Hunter language. And they basically tweaked it a little bit to make it sound more Japanese, but most of the sung tracks are either just choir reverberating, or they're sung in Japanese-sounding Monster Hunter language.
Okay, so it sounds to me then like they're pulling a Nier, and...
Pretty much.
Okay.
But it doesn't sound like Nier at all. At least to me.
Well, yeah,
but it sounds good.
In terms of technique, let's say.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Even the main village has a sung theme with the sung part that is quietly silenced when you're in your own home, and then the sung part springs up and down when you leave and go to the village itself. And if that's not your jam, you can even change which part of the OST plays for which part of the village.
Wait, what?
If you decide you, after like 80 hours, you really hate the two channeler sisters singing Camera Song of Purification, you can switch it for something else entirely. As long as you've listened to a theme, it's unlocked.
Huh.
Which is a nice level of customization.
Okay. Hold on.
Oh, speaking of customization, they even do things that you should like a lot.
Before we move on, I really need to clarify this. You said two channeler sisters are singing the song in the village, and it's technically diegetic, or at least presented that way on some level?
On some level, yes.
Wow,
Which is also why the song is more calmer, and you don't hear lyrics when you're at home.
They really are pulling a Nier 1. Because that's exactly the excuse for Song of the Ancients.
Devola and Popola.
There's only singing when Devola or Popola are around.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, cool.
I didn't make the parallel, but yes. Now to step a little bit further from the songs themselves real quick, it's very clear that they give a lot of importance to the sound design in general. Like, I think World was one of the only games where among the audio options you also have a separate option for dynamic range, because the sound design is very important to the hunting part, where you can be in an area and listen to monsters fighting in a completely different area because they're just roaring at each other. One of the coolest parts is one of the map, Frost Islands. You can go to a coast, and occasionally, not always, there's just going to be this enormous wailing sound, and there's no apparent corresponding monsters. It's just there, and you don't know where. And I don't think it comes from the giant glowing jellyfish you can occasionally see at night in a specific time. But it's interesting. It's just really nicely put up together sound-wise. And yeah, when you get in the actual fights themselves, the way it's divided is that you have the general fight theme. Well, you enter a zone, you have the zone's theme for like a few seconds, and then it stops and you have silence while you're hunting. But when you aggro one of the monsters, if it's the small monsters, you get a version of the theme without lyrics, and it ramps up and gets the vocals and the likes when you get an actual big monsters. With each area having their own theme, which I think is both a way to not have a single track for every single monster,
right,
and a way to make them part of a single ecology.
Okay.
Where the first island have their own ecosystems, with occasionally the monsters just battling at each other, which can get really brutal.
So you implied, yeah.
And but then there's some specific monsters that have their own theme. So to focus a little bit on a couple of examples, the first island theme, I think one of the most distinctive features is that it doesn't sound like an ice level at all. But it sounds really cool. It's just this kind of dynamic, heroic theme with some tension and some mysticism again, because of the way the vocals are implemented, and it really underlines the different nature of the monsters in this game, which are less kind of dinosaur inspired like Worlds were.
Okay.
And way more of a yokai themed selection of monsters this time around.
Well, you did say it was a lot more Japanese influenced. So.
Exactly. I mean, the main menace is inspired by the 100 Demons Parade, very clearly shown in the loading screens. So yeah, that's just something that hits really nice when you go in. You just want to face a monster 5 times your size because you're well armed and well equipped and know how to handle it. But then there's, as I've said, individual monsters theme, and one of the monsters you encounter in the first island is very special in that regard, because it's Kezu. So, Kezu, imagine that. It's some sort of giant, veiny white leech wyvern with a plunge of tail and no eyes.
Ew, that sounds gross.
it is gross and creepy. And so its monster theme, which people upload it as a joke because it has no monster theme, it has just silence.
Huh.
And it's odd because you wouldn't think you'd notice it that hard, given that silence is a part of the game when you're hunting without a monster around. But when you're actually duking it out and getting paralyzed because it also paralyzes you, it hits differently. It really adds to the creepy atmosphere without doing horror theme music. Sometimes silence just works. And then sometimes you have to really pump up the adversity, which is where Megami comes in. Megami being essentially the poster child for this episode.
Okay.
And so, being the poster child, it has its own music. Looks-wise, it's some sort of giant armored cat with purple flames, a spiky tail, and a baboon face.
Interesting.
And very angry and very dangerous, especially since when you play solo, you basically go through the low-rank monsters, then the middling-rank monsters, then a Megami, and then some way easier monsters. It's just that difficulty spikes that two-shots you for no apparent reason. Well, the main reason being that he is angry and hates you, I suppose.
Well, that's a pretty good reason, but not really sure why it's a reason for a difficulty spike.
Oh yeah. Especially since that manifests by a very literal spike going through your head because of the tail.
Right.
But it's got its own music, and I think it's just a very nice reflection of the mix of giant monster and yokai they have going. It's odd that they're not leaning into kaiju imagery, because that couldn't be further removed from that. I suppose my best bet is that they got cold feet after a monster in Monster Hunter World, which was particularly badly received because it's absolutely enormous and it's level-sized, but that makes the fight against it when you just have to hit weak points and use siege weaponry kind of boring in comparison. And I suppose that's why they wanted to steer clear, at least for now, from enormous monsters like that. And so what we have instead is just this high-action, high-intensity mix of violins and strings and traditional Japanese instruments, and it just works really well, and it makes you want to come back to it after you've been knocked out once and get knocked out a second time and still be motivated. Which is important.
Yeah.
Though, when it comes to motivating you against overwhelming adversity, I think we have to step back to Monster Hunter World again, because there's something that's not directly involved in Rise, but that I just have to talk about.
Okay.
And that is Fatalis.
Fatalis.
So, Fatalis is essentially the series super boss.
Okay.
It's a giant black dragon with a torso made of the melted remains of previous hunters, and it hates hunters and you specifically.
Okay.
It also destroyed an entire kingdom in one night, and you fight him on the ruins of that kingdom. And essentially, as I've said, Monster Hunter World had an expansion and then a regular cycle of updates, and Fatalis was the very last monster they added, the conclusion of the entirety of Monster Hunter World and Iceborne. And they did him justice. Basically, I've seen two kinds of video. I haven't fought him myself. I've barely started in Monster Hunter World to get the Monster Hunter gameplay in my finger before Rise, but I'm going to come back to it because I want to fight this giant angry dragon that hates me.
Fair enough. I'm having a similar instance, actually, with Yakuza 0, because I would like to really fight the super bosses there before I move on to the next game, but the problem is I'm stuck behind a rhythm game and I can't seem to beat. Well, that leaves me very annoyed.
No, I get it. Yeah. And in this situation, well... Wait, what was I going to say? Oh, brain again? Oh, yes. Okay, so I've seen basically two kinds of videos on this monster, which came out like 6 months ago. One was the amazing artistic design of the Fatalis encounter. And the other was, is Fatalis too hard? Let's discuss it. Because he is not joking around. It's a 30-minute timed encounter, and you'll need basically to bring him to the end because people have been getting timed out.
Oh boy.
And you have to use everything at your disposal, not only your hunter abilities, but items, crafting items mid-battle, siege weaponry, at several times, basically marking some small face changes. Fatalis just starts flying back and breathing fire. So you have to take shelter to get safe from the fire. Then your shelter starts melting completely and you can't use it for the next time.
Ooh.
So you have to retreat to an entire fortress and lift the front gates, which are massive, in an emergency. Then, basically, the gates lift and then go plunk and partly lower down, and then they start melting too. That's the level of pressure this encounters puts onto you, image-wise, and the music follows along. Even Monster Hunter World had some pretty different tracks, but this one, it's got some Dark Souls energy to it. And for a reason, that's very much a Souls-like atmosphere in many respects.
It sounds like it, other than the large-scale movement you were discussing. That's not very Souls thing, but...
Well, it's not that much large scale. You're facing him at the entrance of that fortress. You just have to retreat behind the gate while he's probably starting to breathe fire already. And then emergency lift it. And then, after like 20 minutes of the encounter, when you have this ominous chanting which go, oh, and you're being pressured, but you have to keep going again and again, and occasionally you die and can return. You have a limited number of tries. Then a message pop up which says that the Dragonator can be activated. The Dragonator is essentially a building-sized power drill made to kill dragons.
A building-sized power drill?
Yes. 2 spears thrusting out, rotating, that hurt a lot. It's the biggest amount of damage you're going to see in the game, and when you finally fire it, it's the first time that Fatalis actually goes down completely, and the music changes to the Monster Hunter main theme, Proof of a Hero. And suddenly you think that maybe, after all, if you survived this long, maybe you do have a chance. as it goes. It's great. It's just, you're in the final stretch now, and they remotivate you just by this change of music.
You'd be surprised how effective that can be.
Yeah. It works out so well, because they tune this encounter so hard, and it's the final point, and they finish it with a main theme, and it just works really well. They do something similar in Rise, where at the end of one of the rampage you have the ability to use a similar kind of weapon on a boss, but it doesn't hit quite the same because you didn't suffer nearly half as much.
There was a game I played recently where it did something similar, and I'm trying to remember what it was, where partway through the boss, it starts playing the game's main theme.
Is it FF14 related?
I don't believe so. I feel like I'd remember that.
True.
Also, I'm not a huge fan of the main themes as they appear in bosses. Like, I don't particularly like Answers. I don't particularly like Dragon Song. They thankfully were nice enough to skip that during...
I meant more something like Tone from Heavens, for instance.
No, I mean, no. I remember... I'm trying to remember what this was. I'm trying to remember, like, I feel like this was an action game.
Well, I sure hope you'll remember, because if you don't, we'll end on a downer, because that's it for Monster Hunter Music Talk. It's good.
Well, unfortunately, that's about as much as I have. Darn. Well, then let's actually just go back to talking about concerts for a second in general and talk about some hopes for the future that hopefully won't be so negative.
You know what? Okay, good. Let's do it. Concerts.
We talked about the SMT concert. We talked about, briefly, the Primals concert for FF14. We talked about, the Arknights concert. God, I cannot believe that's a word I just said out loud.
You sure did.
I sure did. I know that one of the pianists from, A New World, a guy by the name of Benjamin Noose, he's actually started to do, like, piano concerts on his Twitch channel. But if you're in the States, that's evening German time, so that's like 3 in the morning when he starts doing it Los Angeles time, which is unfortunate.
Imagine talking about music at 3 in the morning.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay, in my defense, this was your idea.
It was.
You're the one who said, let's do this today. I am super happy to do it because we basically missed the whole weekend somehow.
I have weird times.
We do have weird times. That is true. My sleep schedule is, as I said, unorthodox.
But this makes for great jokes.
It does. And I had to, as I said, I had to stay up till like 3 or 4 in the morning just to record the concert, the SMT concert a couple weekends ago. God, I guess as a general note, God, I want more. I want more of this.
Yeah.
I would love to just be able to listen to live music again, even if I'm not in a live music environment. You know, trying to be safe and responsible instead of, a self-serving hedonist who just wants to go out and do stuff.
I now have the image of you leaning into the artist in the concerts and just whispering, "Don't you wanna go ape bleep?"
I would never do that. No. I'm almost insulted that you would think I would. That's actually like, well, all right. I'm calling it into this. We're done. All right. Oh God.
But wouldn't it be good though? Just to ramp up the thing and make it less by the book. Come on.
That would be nice.
Mull it over.
It would be nice.
There you go.
It would be nice.
There
I don't know. I guess I'm just too much of a professional engineer to ever try to give live critique, and to try to be a producer.
Well, less of a critique and more of an encouragement, a temptation.
Well, usually that encouragement comes from me being one of the many people screaming in a crowd, but I think we're still a good more of a year away from that. And yet, all I can think of is how cool it will be to get to the next concert. They pushed back the FF7 Remake concert like twice now.
Yeah.
To Microsoft Theater's credit, my ticket is still good. The Carnegie Hall show in New York, no, they refunded me. But to Microsoft, like, this ticket will be good when we go live. And your seat is saved. And I'm like, you guys are amazing. Thank you.
Sweet.
That'll be fun to watch. Assuming it ever happens, but that will be fun to watch.
That it will.
And I'm sure I'll be talking about that on that episode of Music Arcade, but I think that's all the time we have for this one, if I'm not entirely mistaken.
Yeah. So thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you for hearing us ramble about Monster Hunter and concerts. And here's hoping that y'all get a chance to experience something like this yourself pretty soon, because let me tell you, there is nothing like listening to live music. And there's definitely nothing like...
fast.
There's definitely nothing like hearing your favorite game songs performed. Like, that's just something I think people kind of underestimate as silly, but it really isn't. It's wonderful, and I hope you guys get a chance to do it.
I think we both love concerts, whether we attend a lot of them or not. But we still won't kill people with sickness for them.
Yeah.
So we have to hold fast.
We do. We do. Stay safe out there, everybody.
Yeah.
And with that, we are going to go ahead and close the Music Arcade for this week. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back next time. Thank you guys.
See ya.